And next, we have a panel with some of our partners. And for that, I want to invite Sean Anderson, our head of product marketing, to drive the panel for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ofer. If I could have my esteemed panelists join me on stage, that'd be great. All right. We got everyone? Okay, great. Oh, geez. Okay. So hey, everyone. As Ofer mentioned, my name is Sean Anderson. I'm the head of product marketing at Vectara. I've been with the company for a little over a year and a half, and it's been great to see not only the evolution of our company, but also the evolution of kind of just production Gen AI use cases. I think what we're seeing today is very different than what we saw a year ago today. I think both Bob and Amr touched on some of the reasons why we're seeing this like increased proliferation, this increased attention in the Gen AI space. But we'd be, even though Vectara itself provides an end-to-end platform, we'd be remiss to acknowledge the fact that it really requires an ecosystem in order to deliver these capabilities. Everything from the underlying data, the infrastructure, the networking, and the security. And that's really where our partners become key in delivering these capabilities. So we've teamed up with 3 key partners for Vectara here to help tell a broader story. And what I'd like to do now is to just have the team tell a little bit about themselves and the company they're here representing. And then we're going to get into some questions with them. So Aman, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Great to meet everyone. My name is Aman Chabra. I work at Google Cloud. Been here about 6 years and currently working on our Gen AI partnerships with companies like Vectara.
And I'm Nick Luzio. I'm an ML AI solution engineer at Arise. Arise does observability and explainability for the LLM systems.
Good morning, and my name's Chris Tolbert. So actually, I'm with Carahsoft. So I want to thank you all for taking the time, on a Friday, coming out to join us here at our office. So I support Vectara here at Carahsoft, for onboarding and helping, get connected with the federal government. Glad to be here. Thanks.
Excellent. And kind of continuing on this theme of the interconnectedness of services and platforms that enable these Gen AI capabilities, let's start with you, because obviously Google has a pretty broad ecosystem of solutions and capabilities, and that's not even counting all of your partner integrations and stuff like that. So how are you seeing the work in kind of stitching all of these things together to really enable the end use cases, which Amr talked about, AI agents and AI assistants?
Yeah, so I think, it all starts with gravity of where your applications sit and where your data sits. And I think, 4 or 5 years ago, we had this push on, data warehousing and analytics, which is still there, obviously, but all of that drives the Gen AI applications, right? So, and that's where Google Cloud comes in. Obviously, we have a host of infrastructure tools. We have a host of data tools and also AI tools to basically build whatever you want. We support first-party native services. We support third-party services and open source. We're huge on open source as well. So yeah, Google Cloud kind of being the one-stop shop where you can basically bring everything. And we started out on that data journey, and so we've seen the evolution of customers. They bring all of their data to stuff like BigQuery, which is our data warehouse. Then you can move it over to Vertex, which is our AI platform. And so we've seen a lot of that happen. But then at each layer of the stack, we also support, third party and OSS as well. So, and, working with Arise and other partners too. And so really the choice is yours. We support building whatever you want to build. And then from an overall platform perspective, I know this is kind of a public sector audience. I actually just moved here from California. So it's, grew up in this area, but we actually don't distinguish our clouds like other providers. They have a specific gov cloud offering or like a government offering. We actually build our Google Cloud as a whole up to the FedRAMP standard. So there's no distinction. You don't get a lesser experience. You don't get a different experience. We kind of build it all to the highest standard. And so really that's our approach to the situation.
Yeah, and just one follow-up question on that. Given that Google is globally distributed, how are you seeing kind of adoption patterns as you operate global cloud infrastructure and are deploying these AIs? Is it still mainly centered here in the U.S., or are you starting to see more pop up?
I think we're still seeing the most in the U.S. so far, and that's because and I have a global role. I work a lot with our EMEA counterparts and in APAC and Japan, and I think the uptick there is a little bit slower, just to be brutally honest with you. And that's because in EMEA there's a lot of regulation that you have to kind of get past, which I think a lot of customers haven't gotten past the regulation yet. And I think here it's a little bit more. I'm not going to say like Wild West, but yeah, we'll let Nick comment on that. I think people are a little bit more eager to adopt here, and especially in the private sector, because everyone wants to differentiate themselves over the competition. And so in order to differentiate, you say, okay, well, what new technologies can I adopt, and how fast can I adopt it? And so there's a lot more willingness there. And actually, even in North America, we're actually seeing a distinction between US and Canada. I've actually seen, I don't know if you guys have seen that too, but where Canada is actually operating more like the EU in their approach to things, which was kind of an interesting thing that I've seen. But certainly, I think we're seeing it globally, but I think the gravity is still here where we're at today.
And speaking of broad solutioning, I wanted to volley it over to Chris here. I was looking at the Carahsoft marketplace, and just in the category of AI solutions, I think there's 136 vendors in there. In generative AI alone, over 30. So obviously, you kind of sit at the intersection of this, kind of supporting the AI and analytics companies. How are you seeing these companies come together to specifically service your focus customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, at Carahsoft, we, work with, hundreds upon hundreds of different partners, in the technology space and, government contracting space. And, we kind of see this as, you've probably heard it a million times, but, this is kind of, like the age of the internet, is what, we really see, resonating, with the emergence of, Gen AI. We have new players coming in, small startups, a couple of guys in a garage who have, a great play that they want to get out there, to, the big players, OpenAI, NVIDIA, even, the larger traditional, companies, SAP, they're all, jumping on that, AI bandwagon. And while there's a lot of similar, things going on, each individual, company has a completely different approach than what someone else is. And one of the, great things, and also, kind of leads into that uncertainty with AI, is just the applicability of it. There are so many use cases out there that we haven't even begun to think of, that we can apply AI for. So it's kind of, just, drinking from a fire hose. You have so many different, potential use cases, potential offerings that, we have to navigate to make sure that, hey, we are providing, our customers what they need and what they want now.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about kind of end to end, and Nick, I think one of the things that gets overlooked maybe until it's too late, right, are like truly some of the things that you need to operate these things with confidence, with reliability. I'm curious to what you guys see. I know Arise is focused on evaluation, but is that just something that you do at the end, or is that something that needs to kind of follow the whole process?
Yeah, I think there are teams that have found if you wait until the end to do evaluations, you will run into trouble, right? I think we saw some examples there with maybe Canada Air, these RAG systems or chatbot systems that are going out. We're not evaluating them in production, right? We've dropped them into production and there's no evaluation and they're kind of doing whatever they want. We are seeing now a big shift into evaluations much earlier in the development cycle. So as your developers are getting in there and first starting to build out their applications or working with something like Vectara, getting those evaluations in early and in that development environments before you get it out to your production teams is definitely super important to stop the hallucinations, stop any issues that you're seeing there. So certainly seeing that move into more of the development life cycle.
Yeah, in Amer's speech, he really focused on kind of the three challenges, right? The security, the accuracy, which has to do with both the retrieval side and the hallucination side. I'm curious, and this is open to anyone who'd like to comment, are many of the concerns, like when you talk to people who are looking to adopt these systems, the people that are looking to build these systems. Is hallucination the main concern that they need to address, or are you guys seeing other things, hearing voiced concerns about other things?
Yeah, at least from the Arise side and like the clients that we're working with, certainly it depends on where they are in their life cycle, right? As they get into that production world, hallucinations and accuracy become extremely important. If you are working with customers, if you are, giving advice to paying customers, very important that that stuff is accurate and accurate to the information that's being retrieved there. In the development space, right, you're much more focused on, are my retriever steps working correctly? So am I pulling back the right information? We talked a little bit about re-rankers before. Are my re-rankers working correctly, right? Am I ranking the top returned content correctly? Or am I still pulling irrelevant content back? So development, right, very important to get retrieval right. And then you want to make sure you're getting accuracy and cutting down on hallucinations once you're into production.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, at least being on the cloud platform side of things, the most questions that I get, especially from financial services and public sector, are around regulation, data processing. So how is my data being stored, if at all? Who's processing it? Where does it go? Where is it being processed? I think those are the biggest questions. And then also, on the LLM side of the world, you'll get questions around indemnification, right? And I think this is a big thing when you look at commercial versus open source as well, because a lot of the commercial entities will provide legal protection and indemnification protection, but on the open source side of things, you won't necessarily get it. So it's really like around getting through those concerns first. And then, once you clear those bars, then it's more, okay, well, yeah, then you get onto the hallucination. But it's not like customers don't care about hallucination themselves, right? You care about outcomes, right? So the outcome is, I want my service to work reliably. I need it to be very, very, very consistent, right? And so then you work backwards from there. So you have to and to Nick's point, right? It's adopted this software development lifecycle approach, which kind of moved to cloud with DevOps and now moved to ML with MLOps, and now it's kind of in its own thing in the LLM world too. LLM ops, but it's this whole notion of, in order to have that confidence, you need to have the different testing frameworks, right? So you need to test at a unit level, test at the integration level and the end-to-end level. So, and developing those test cases and the success criteria first helps you deploy reliably. And then that way, whenever you want to switch out a component of your system, you know exactly where it's failing, because now it's so complex, right? So you go from, you have data silos, you're ingesting it, you're cleaning it, you're storing it in different databases, you're using LLMs at 3 or 4 different parts of the layer. And so how do you know when the chain breaks down? How do you know when the hallucination is actually happening, or where the reliability is breaking? And I think that's where you need the test cases, evaluation sets, and all of that stuff. And that's where I think Amr said earlier, where you see people developing POCs in 2 days, right? And so, yeah, it is. Yeah, you can have a developer hack away for a day or two and get something done, but that's not a solution that really, that's a solution that a startup could sell to a venture capitalist. And that's what happens in my world in California, where you take an idea and you raise $10 million based on that idea, but this just doesn't work for the enterprise, doesn't work for big business. So.
And Chris, I'm curious to know, specific to the government, right? Are there additional concerns? I think I think Bob brought up a couple of them, but anything else you're seeing?
Yeah. As you all mentioned, hallucinations is very important. Accuracy and timeliness is something that we all want. But in the public sector side, first and foremost is security. The first question we get from a lot of people is there a FedRAMP for AI? Which things are with memos have been coming out. They are working on producing frameworks to make it a lot easier for government customers to make sure that, hey, what they're buying is compliant in terms of security, where it's HIPAA, PII, anything like that. That's just for the general public. When we're talking to national security, that gets a step even above. Making sure that data is secured, making sure that we're not being able to be victim to I forget the exact term, but I would call it like a cross-site scripting attack, prompt attacks. So those things are at the first, at the front of most higher ups' minds is number one, making sure it's secure. Because as most people know, I mean, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the government. So if something goes wrong and it's on their watch, they're going to have to pay for it, which means we all have to pay for it. So that's something that's very important. And we'll see iterations come out. Standards that are going to be set a year from now are not going to be the same standards that we're going to have 5 years from now, just because this whole space is evolving at such a rapid place. We don't know what we don't know yet in terms of what liabilities lay out there in Gen AI.
Yeah, it's a great point. It really behooves all of us to make this more efficient and stuff, because we all benefit as members of the community to do that. I want to double click on something that you said, Aman, and I think it's totally true. We see a lot of people go grab a bunch of stuff off Hugging Face, make a quick prototype, but I think they reach a harsh reality when they actually try to scale that, or when they try to actually put that into a mission critical system. So what is that new set of challenges that you see when people say, okay, now I got to take this thing to production?
Yeah, so I think there's, you have to make a decision of build versus buy. I think that's like the kind of age-old decision, which is, do I roll something on my own and take that liability, or do I put that on a third party? And do you put it on Google? Do you put it on Vectara? Do you put it on Arise? And the more players that you add into that space, the more like kind of vulnerability, not vulnerability, but like the more things that you have to protect for. So I think there's that, but then also there's scalability concerns too, right? So it's like, am I picking something that is going to grow with my workload as it grows into production? Because there's also a lot of compute heaviness there and then do I want to burden that cost as well? So I think, yeah, there's a lot of considerations when you go from just like Hugging Face to actually trying to deploy something. You really need to figure out, well, like, what am I willing to take on myself versus like, what am I pushing on, and which tools am I picking, and how are they going to grow with me, and how are they going to scale with me, and that kind of thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and then I think to add on that a little bit, as you go from a development state, right, maybe you have an application that has 1 or 2 steps in it, right? Very simple. It is looking for some content and generating an answer from that. Once you actually get into production, that system's going to scale way up. You're going to have, 10, 15 API calls to other systems, to other backends, to other microservices. That all becomes very complicated on top of the LLM calls that you're going to need to make there. So it just becomes very important to understand that system from start to finish when you do get into production there. And like Aman was saying, there are cost considerations there too as well, right? This is taking a ton of compute power to get done. So fine tuning, where are we using LLMs to actually, do what they're good at, and where do we go to the traditional ML and some of the less compute intensive processes to maybe make up for it on that end.
So I kind of recognized as we were talking through this that we focused a lot this morning on like the scary stuff, right? Like the security breach, the stumbling to get production, stuff like that. And I want everybody in the audience to know we've got one more session on this from our head of field marketing, who has a unique perspective because he's out talking to people every single day. But the second half of our stuff today is going to be showing you the light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to show you how to attack things like agentic RAG and hallucination detection. So I just wanted to quickly ask the team as we round things out here, what are you most excited? And it could be something that your company's working on. It could just be something in the industry, like a trend that you think is going to be either super exciting or maybe fills in the gaps and makes these things a better reality. So I'll kick it off to you, Aman, first. But are you wearing Google shoes?
So it's actually funny because like everyone asks me if they're Google shoes. They just have similar colors. But yeah,
you understood the assignment.
I did. I had to wear my branding today. I mean, I'll take my Google hat off for a second, and I think I'm super excited for self-driving just personally. I think that's going to be
Waymos are so cool.
Yeah,
Waymos are very, very
yeah,
cool.
if you've ever been to San Francisco, Google's rolled out like the Waymo self-driving cabs now, so that's been pretty cool. But I think just the industry as a whole is going to be super exciting to watch. But then, tying it back to this, I think, being able to automate a lot of the mundane things that we go through every day, like a lot of the workflows and processes, and within the next 6 to 12 months, I think we're kind of there, right? Like where a lot of the low-hanging fruit can be tackled. So I'm excited to not work on boring stuff anymore, to be honest with you. And like that is a reality, right? That is reality. And I think that last year was definitely the year of like just what is possible. And I'm not saying that we've identified everything that's possible today. But I think that we've identified enough where it's really adding business value to a lot of companies now and a lot of organizations where there is like low-hanging fruit that's actually proven. Because I know like a lot of big companies, they don't want to do anything unless like it's really, it's been proven out. And I think we have proven out at least a fair set of use cases, not everything. But it's only going to evolve over time, and there's just going to be more and more that can just be automated away through the use of this technology. And yeah, like the less human error, that there is, and people don't want to work on things that are boring. So I think that'll be super exciting to watch.
Yeah, from where we sit today, it's like crazy to think that we'll ever know all the use cases for AI, because I think it's really only bound by our own creativity there.
Well, I'll say like one last thing. It is really interesting because if you're in the space, you get it and like you see the light. But I don't think, I'll just speak personally. Like my wife is an attorney. And, like the legal space is like just not, they're kind of very slow adopters to technology. And so you talk to people outside of technology and like the light bulb hasn't gone off yet for most people. I would say like 80-90% of people. It's like, but for where the light bulb has gone off, you kind of like see, oh, the world is going to be different and it will change. And so, I think that evolution is going to be interesting to see how it unfolds, especially with the country in its current state. So.
Yeah, I think, from a use case perspective, right, automating the boring stuff is where we want to start. There's a great Python book called Automate the Boring Stuff. And I think that's really where this all gets going. If you think back to like 2018, 2019 with the original like GPT-1 or even Transformers before that, there were the ideas of what we could start doing, right? Named entity extraction, different types of form filling. But these larger transformers, GPT class transformers, have really push forwards what we can do. Finally starting to see that get into production now. So that's super exciting, the production use cases.
Yeah, and in terms of possible use cases in the public sector, there are always those cool ones that we hear about, whether it's being able to detect speeders automatically based on set of cameras, bad behavior, to protect people. But I think really what's going to be really cool is seeing coming out of the woodwork is going to be those citizen type engagement use cases that really just kind of change the way that we interact with our population. Heck, I remember when I was growing up, if you needed to get something done, whether it's registering your car, getting your license, you had to go to the DMV and sit there for 5 hours. Now we have the internet, and boy, I can do a lot of stuff without having to get up off my couch on a Saturday morning and going into some government office, waiting in line, and filling out forms. So I'm really excited to see what the next level that's going to be in terms of how I interact with my county, with my state, with the country, with the federal government itself. Whether I have specific issues, whether it's hey, am I doing my taxes correctly? Does this affect this? Does this affect that? I'm envisioning the day where we can ask questions directly to the IRS and get accurate answers that come same day. Those sorts of things. I think it's going to be really exciting. They'll start off as a small little project that someone's done, in some county in California, and it'll just spread across the U.S. with different counties, and then hopefully get bigger and bigger and bigger.
I think that asking a question to the IRS is probably the most ambitious Gen AI use case that I've ever heard.
So I actually have so this is like kind of off script, but like a real story. This actually happened this last tax year for 2023. My wife and I were kind of like in this weird tax situation, and I couldn't find the answer anywhere. Like I'd searched TurboTax, whatever other stuff online. And so I actually just dumped all of so speaking of RAG, right? So this is a real use case. So I downloaded all of like the actual, California tax forms, IRS forms, all the guidelines. I uploaded it to, and I'll take my Google hat off, ChatGPT, at the time, and yeah, and then it actually was able to like give me very coherent, cohesive answers that I was literally not able to get anywhere else. And it like that was almost like a light bulb moment for me was like the tax thing. And I'll make one other kind of like off the script kind of comment here, which is that it's funny because so I worked at Cisco for about 10 years or so before entering this space, and we used to sell like voice over IP and contact center and that kind of thing. And the one thing that people have been selling for forever is like what you call customer experience transformation. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that. But it's literally something that's been around for like a decade plus at this point. But it's funny to see like how things are, coming full circle. It's like we were talking about customer experience transformation, then Nick had mentioned, people were doing intent detection and entity extraction, all this stuff. But it was still bad for lack of better words. But like we're finally getting to that point where like, the technology has evolved to where you can actually do real customer experience transformation. So it's just funny to see like how like what's old is becoming new, and we're continuing to tell those stories, but it's actually becoming real now. Many years down the road. So.
Yeah, and to touch on some of like the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Talking about intent detection. So a customer comes in, asks you a question. What is the intent of that question? In 2-3 years ago, that would have taken 2 weeks and hundreds of lines of data to actually get a model like that trained, where today you can spin that up in 8 hours and get that fired up and running in a pretty accurate state. So things are much faster. Acceleration is really there. As long as you're careful, you got your evaluations in place, then there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, I think for almost every vertical and/or industry, we're now at an inflection point. Like technology has basically forced all those inflection points to align, which I think is really cool. Hey, gang, I really appreciate the conversation today, and I think we could probably do this for another hour easily, but I know we have a packed agenda today. I do want to say thank you to all of our partners. Obviously, a road show like we're doing here, we were just in New York on Tuesday. It really wouldn't be possible without the help and support of our partners and our ecosystems. And special thank you to Carasoft for the absolutely beautiful accommodations, as well as technology and room. Really just first class from the second we stepped into the building. So thank you guys so much. We're going to have several breaks. We'll have a networking break. We'll have a lunch break. The partners will be set up over here. I encourage you to have conversations with them, follow up on any of the topics that you heard here. And again, thank you guys so much for your support.